To our Real You Show followers and listeners, this is a heavy one. Welcome back to another episode of The Real You Show. We always said we were only going to use this platform to discuss real stories, real life challenges, to discuss things that affect all of us today. And because we wanted to stay true to our mission, just as we promised, we took a break. We went silent, completely silent. So many of you reaching out, encouraging us to keep producing more content. But we remained silent. Silent out of respect. It's been a while. And today, we want to start by sharing a bit of our journey with you. Yes, we took a break. Why? Simply because we needed it. Simply because we weren't okay either. So many of you that we know weren't okay too. And to give you a little bit more context, the day we began prepping for our next big exciting episode with a very special guest, the world was shaken by the unimaginable news from Gaza. From that moment on, we, like many of you, were thrown into turmoil. The pain and the heaviness of the daily news weighed in on us. Yet, we chose to show up at work every single day, carrying that burden and carrying it in silence. But times have changed. In moments when empathy is more crucial than ever, we find ourselves surrounded by stories of leaders focused only on the numbers, only on the deliverables, and only on doing what has to be right. But what's right? What's right at a time when the world is going through so much change? It's really disheartening when you feel alone, and it's a call for change. Today, we're honored to speak with someone who embodies that change. Over the last 7 months, she has transformed her life in profound ways. She's not new to you. After more than 20 years in a high-tech career, she left it all behind to create a movement of change, pursuing what she believes is right, creating impact at a time when content has become absolutely meaningless, and at a time when people just preach without executing what's been preached. She's on a mission to teach leaders how to be less self-centered and more human, more compassionate, and more connected than ever. Yes, she's here today with us to share her insights on dealing with a world that has become increasingly materialistic, less human, a world that has locked us away behind 4 walls without anyone ever asking if we're okay. She's here to shake us, to wake us up, and to remind us that we all matter. We all have a voice. And we're human, after all. I personally can't wait to kick off this episode with someone who is bringing in real change. So what's change? It's simply someone who gave it all away. To do what's right. To have a purpose in life. And to contribute to society in the most meaningful way possible. Stay with us as we delve into an inspiring story, exploring how she's turning her vision into reality, and what we all can learn from her journey. Today, she is the co-founder of the UC Berkeley Institute in MENA, and it's only been 7 months since we last spoke on air, but so much has changed. Diana, welcome back to you and welcome back to us. I think we couldn't have come back better.
I promised you.
Yes, you did
Yes.
actually, but we didn't expect it to be under these circumstances, obviously. We have so much to talk about, and I'm so excited because
Me too.
So much has changed in the last 7 months, as I mentioned in the intro. How have you been? Let's talk about that first, because you've done a lot of change.
Yeah, like you said, I changed my entire life in the last couple of months. And the last time I was here, I promised you I'm going to be back. I didn't know it's going to be with that much of a transformation.
Neither did
just
I.
in a couple of months, right?
Yeah.
How has it been? I'm well. I'm actually doing really well. I've recently transitioned from my 20-year career, high-tech corporate job for such a long time to dedicate my time and my life to developing others.
Right.
And that didn't come easy.
Right.
That was not an easy decision.
Right. And as I said in the intro, you left it all behind to create purpose.
Yeah.
Find your calling, which we're going to obviously, go back to in the midst of the episode. But before we go into everything, I think I need to call out the elephant in the room. As I mentioned in my intro, the day we started shooting, we were shooting for our next episode. We had a guest that we wanted to bring in. We were super excited. October 7th happened. And I can't but reference back to your last LinkedIn post that was very explosive, if I can say that, that you only posted a few days ago.
Yeah.
But I know for a fact that your phone exploded, you had messages, DMs from people who could really relate
Yeah.
to what you were saying. And if you don't mind, I'd love to read out some of that,
Absolutely,
and then
for sure.
we'll go right into
Yeah.
it, right? So you said if you are following the intolerable cruelty committed against Palestinians in Gaza, then you also have changed. Millions of us in the region are in emotional despair, unable to find meaning and focus on our work. So many organizations are turning a blind eye, expecting their employees to show up every day while leaving their hearts at home. I know this because I speak to so many of you in my network. If you need your people to spend a minimum of 8 hours of their day at work, the minimum you owe them is to check in on them, to be human with a human, to simply care for your people who spend the majority of their day and week working for you away from what really matters to them right now. Wow. What prompted you to write that?
I wrote that from my heart. And it was just something I drafted and it went up. And I didn't think twice because I felt really strongly that I needed to say that.
Right.
In the short time that I left, obviously, my corporate career, I wasn't expecting that many individuals, ex-colleagues, ex-team members of mine, friends from our industry. There was an inpour of, people reaching out to me who were just asking for advice.
Right.
Not even necessarily coaching, like just advice, and were opening their hearts to me. And I realized that, we are in crisis.
Right.
And the world of work is in crisis. As humans, we are in crisis.
Right.
And I'm not going to make this a political conversation, but it's a human conversation, right? Of course. And so much changed around us, globally, regionally, and we're all impacted. And it's so sad. And that's the reality.
Right.
People are expected to leave their hearts at home. And this is not about pointing fingers or, sort of trying to find out who's right and wrong. It's just about stating what I'm observing. And what I'm observing is that people are detaching, they're highly emotional,
Right.
and they don't know how to go about their day when they spend 8 to 9 to 10, sometimes 12 hours of their day working.
Right.
That's an issue.
Right. To that point, which hit me and so many people as well, that phrase of human to human. And I really have to reference back to, in our last episode, you said a statement which was an aha moment for me. You said the real pandemic is the one we're facing right now in the corporate world. And again, not pointing fingers, as you rightfully mentioned, but it's really about the stress levels that every single person that we know, that I know, is facing today, right? And, you barely have time to eat. You barely have time to check in on anyone during the day. It's all about deliverables. No one ever asks you if you're okay, right? And has your perspective changed since you're the only one right now that I know of that detached from that environment. And when you look at it from the outside, what are you thinking? What can you say, especially to leaders today? Because that's obviously what your role is about, and we'll get into that in a bit.
I think the way that I'm looking at the situation is that I feel like it's my duty in a way to create awareness of what I'm observing. I have this heightened sense of awareness, but that is also because that's not just because, I was in a leadership role and I was responsible for a lot of my team members who were deeply impacted by what's going on, right? And I think one thing that I saw as my absolute responsibility is that I now have the opportunity to be there for people outside of one single organization. And I'm free to be of service, at scale.
Right.
At scale. And so I wasn't able to do that before, obviously, I was running a full-time job, my time didn't permit that, but also I'm really on a mission because of this influx of requests that I'm receiving from people. Like in some cases, it's really urgent, right? It's someone reaching out to me, in the evening and telling me like, can I come in for, a coaching session with you? Like I'm in a toxic environment, or I'm not okay. I don't know how to show up to work because I just watched these horrific scenes that we're seeing in the news.
Right.
And it's not natural. It's not natural how we are going about our day.
Right. It wasn't natural before already, right? Post-COVID.
It amplified.
And now
so-
it has amplified so much. And obviously what you just said was how people are reaching out to you, telling you they're not okay, they need a coaching session, how to go about their dealing with their bosses, their leaders, their day-to-day, the amount of deliverables we all have on our plate. And I really want to stop there for a moment, and I'd love to ask you personally. So obviously you're now the co-founder of UC Berkeley in MENA. You've been traveling so much, giving, the society and obviously all that you have, because it's been your passion. You are coaching people from all over the world, but you're also coaching people from different hierarchies, right? What do we all have in common today in looking at the environment we're all in today?
I love that question. I think there is a commonality that people have lost the courage to speak up.
Right.
And I'm not only referring to Gaza, right? Speaking up, again, not everyone who comes comes specifically in for this topic, right? But comes in for other topics, such as, I feel like I'm sort of not in alignment with my manager. There are certain things that I need in the job. I don't know how to go about it. Others are coming in and, facing conflict, and they don't know sort of how can they transform their style and their approach at work. It can be so many things that I'm currently, coaching through and dealing with. But I think the one common thing is that people have lost the courage to speak up.
Right.
And to hold space. But everyone wants someone to hold space for them at work. That's also very common.
Yeah.
How did we get to a point where we don't hold space for each other anymore?
Wow.
I think we mentioned it last time when you and I, sort of sat here, is that we spend so much more time at work than we do with our family.
Yeah.
And there's two scenarios that I'm seeing, right? People leave their jobs during the day, they come home, and either they are, opening up to their partners, husbands, wives about, how they're feeling, that they're really down, they don't know how to deal with a certain situation. This is the common scenario right now.
Right.
What if we flip it and we send our people home where they feel like, as a leader, again, you don't need to have all the solutions. It's very unrealistic to put that on a leader. But you can send your people home by having checked in with them.
Right.
Having had an open conversation, right? A vulnerable conversation.
Right.
Do you know how far it goes when you as a leader just open that tap to your heart, right? And say like, I'm also feeling this and I'm also dealing with that, or this is how I've dealt with this in the past, whatever that topic is. So long answer to your question is that people have lost the courage to speak up.
Right.
And on the other side, as leaders, as colleagues, we stopped holding space for each other.
Right.
For some reason, because we're very busy. The focus is, and this was my biggest transition, is that, previously in my job, I was always there for my people,
Right.
for sure. But I had to, I was accountable for the success and the achievement of the organization, for the growth, or the revenue growth of the organization. And now today, I'm purely dedicating my time to just, develop others.
That's beautiful.
Right? And so it is no longer about, I need to do this for me. I need to make this much money. I need to have, sort of that level of success and that level of growth. It is, for me, I'm now at a stage in my life, and I'm really feeling very blessed that I was able to get to this stage in my life where I'm saying, you know what, I'm in a good place.
Right.
And I want to dedicate everything I've learned over the last 20 years and what I'm really, really passionate about and what I feel strongly towards. I just want to make other people better.
Right.
Right. And because I've had so much experience in the world of work, and my focus is on leadership, that is where I'm focusing my time, because the truth is it starts from the top. You know, we need
Absolutely.
our leaders to model how to hold space, how to
Right.
check in.
Right.
You know, I'm seeing a lot of some of the best organizations have so many resources about, you know, if you're not feeling okay, here are all of these PDF files or PowerPoint presentations.
Let me put you in a training. Right?
Exactly, like
Yeah.
a self-learning training,
Yeah.
or you know what? That doesn't help.
Right. Right.
It does. You can have a menu of well-being resources, and that's not what your people need. What your people need is for you to hold space and have a conversation and just check in.
Right.
I mean, this is the simplest form of human connection,
Right.
right?
Absolutely.
None of us wake up and there's no way, especially when you're working, right? You wake up and you don't have a conversation with another human. There's no way you go through the day and you don't interact with someone,
Of course.
right?
Yeah.
And so how did we get to a point where we don't check in with each other anymore?
Right. You know, in the last episode, and I went home with that statement, and I've been carrying it with me since today. You had such a powerful definition for a boss and a leader. And a lot of people reached out to me after that, by the way. Friends of mine,
Yeah.
we had conversations of discussing their bosses or their leaders. And it all kind of, it hit all of us that, you know, when they would be talking about their good boss, they would say, my boss, oh no, sorry, my leader, right? Because it's such a big difference. Interestingly enough, and I really want to talk about this openly. UC Berkeley aside, you know, global organization, highly accredited. Personally, if you ask me, and disclaimer, this is a personal opinion, I see so many people on LinkedIn sharing, you know, I have now been certified, I have a leadership certification and whatnot. I know for a fact that some of these are the worst bosses, right? And we'll go into that shortly. I think we'll discuss the difference once again. But UC Berkeley aside, and I would highly advise everyone to get certified by UC Berkeley if they want to become good leaders. What was your turning point? Again, UC Berkeley aside, what was your turning point when you said, that's not for me? You know, thank you for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But I want to help people. That's what I want to do.
A powerful question. It was a sequence of events. So I can't say it was this one specific moment, but I definitely remember the sequence of moments.
Right.
That I also struggled with myself in silence, because, you know, the hardest thing that I had to do as part of the transition is to be honest with myself.
Right.
Right. Again, I'm very grateful because, you know, sort of the journey that I took over the last 20 years was exactly the journey that I needed to take. And I've had some wonderful people come into my life, some wonderful leaders that I met, right, that inspired me as well. And so I would say over the past year, to be more specific, I've seen a sequence of things that happened in the workplace, whether it was global layoffs and how they were handled, how people, when they are impacted by global layoffs, it's so sad, really, that's the reality. And so again, I can speak to someone who's based in London, I can speak to someone who's based in the States, and I can speak to someone who's based here in the UAE. And so many people are so emotionally invested in their jobs, is that when they face global layoff, they lose their self-worth.
Right.
Totally.
Right.
And so that is a huge sort of work that I bring into my coaching sessions, is that when self-worth and making sure that you don't outsource that to a single organization.
Lovely.
It's really hard to do, because a lot of people do that. If you ask someone, you know, like, who are you or what do you do? The first thing that you say is, I am the X title of company X.
Yes.
That's not who you are.
Yes. Do you know what? I love that you just brought this up. One of the reasons, the main reasons why the show was created was to remove the title. I wanted people to talk about who they really are.
True.
What makes you so human? And this is the second time I'm bringing you in, and it's and I love how you always come back to that. It's remove the title and let's talk about you. How do we make you a better human / better leader? And I want to ask you, now that you brought this up, working with you or being your client, if I can say that, what can people expect from you?
It is a wide spectrum of, so if I want to simplify it, think of any challenge that you face. And I'm going to dig on this a bit deeper, but think of any challenge that you face in the workplace. You will recognize that what happens at work impacts you in your personal life too.
Oh, me all the
Right?
time.
And I can give you an example of, someone, and I'll be never obviously referring to any names of my clients, but like, someone who's currently working on potentially a promotion, is very invested in that, but there's certain behaviors that are standing in the way. And, I'm doing a lot of mindset transformation coaching in this case, because I recognize at the core of it, once you hold space for somebody and you really dig, like this is only your time.
Right.
A lot of the challenges that individuals come to me with are mindset related, self-limiting beliefs, frustration, fear. It stems usually from those sort of, I would say, often self-inflicted, belief systems.
Right.
And so obviously leadership development is something you and I talked about a lot last time, but mindset transformation coaching, crushing self-limiting beliefs, and showing you that no matter what challenge you bring me, you're never really stuck. You can make yourself unstuck and you can get out of, again, I want to be realistic because I think even in my life, there was definitely a point when I also felt stuck.
I think we all face it at some point.
I'm not superhuman, right? Like we all face that, right? And so, but I think, again, when I think back to that time, it's like, I'm reflecting now and I say to myself, I had to go through this and I had to make sure that I know how to get out of, those moments of feeling stuck to really make sure that I can do that for others. I can guide them through it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have so many questions as you're talking about that, but I think about feeling stuck. I had a friend of mine who I was talking to the other day, and he was saying, I need to get out of corporate ASAP. And I, my first question was, do you have a plan? And he's like, no, I don't. But I just know that I need to be out of here ASAP, right? When someone comes to you to tell you, and someone who has a lot of potential, someone who's very good at what they do, and they tell you, I'm stuck. What do I do? I don't have a plan. What do you do to help them?
This is so common, by the way.
Right.
That's why I mentioned the word stuck, because it is so common. I would probably say in 90% of the cases, when I'm working through a coaching session, the concept of stuck comes up. And so I'm not surprised. So in this specific case, for your friend that came to you, it's very important this is what I see happening. So when someone feels like they want to change course, they immediately look at, maybe I could do this thing or that thing or that thing. I'm not really sure where I'm going to be investing my time. It's very important to take a step back, especially when you've been working for a while.
Right.
You're not at entry point and you're sort of, starting to get off experience. Take a step back and really reflect on, you would be surprised if you ask someone today, what are your true values? Like, what do you value in the place of work? Most of the time, people don't know how to articulate that. They don't know. They've never actually paused and thought of it, right?
Wow.
And so, to answer your question about your friend, is I would really sort of the tip that I would give is take a moment and identify what are your values, what do you care about, and what brings your energy up,
right?
And what takes from your energy. Why is that so important? Because if I move now from point A to point B, and I haven't done this exercise and the self-reflection, I can mistakenly choose a new job that has all of the wrong values.
Of course.
And so there's a moment of self-awareness. And I can give you a very simple example. Like there's this, we can spend an hour on this, but I'll give you a very sort of summary of that. There's this beautiful exercise that I do, which is called your professional heartbeat, right? And so you have an X and Y axis on that. It's a blank piece of paper. My client will draw that X, Y. X is sort of your timeline of your life, and Y is moments in your life that transformed you or sort of made you the person that you are today. And you mark those moments. And if there's something that was very meaningful to you and that really changed you sort of deeply, that's usually a high on that framework, right? And when something dragged you down, it could have been, I didn't get along with my boss, I got fired, I wasn't thriving in the workplace. That's usually a down. And so as part of the exercise, you get this heartbeat, right?
Right.
Now, how do you get your values? How do I extract someone's values and make them self-aware of what kind of job not to attract? Because if your friend wants to leave corporate, there's so many things, and we need to be very careful here. You can have someone who leaves corporate and is sort of financially okay and is like, I don't need to go back, to that type of work, and they'll be self-sustaining themselves. But what if not? Which is most of the cases. What if someone needs very quickly to be able, to go back to a job? You don't want them to choose the wrong job again, because it's just going to be the same loop and cycle of, not being fulfilled and not being happy. So going back to the professional heartbeat, I usually ask you, if you mark your high, I tell you, why was that a high to you? Articulate to me, what emotions did you feel? And as a result of that, I'll be able to help you, guide you to extract your values.
Right.
Same way we do that on your lows. And so what you get at the end of it is the heartbeat picture of, you'll be super aware of, okay, the next venture I'm going to go into, or the next job I'm going to choose, I have to make sure that I bring a lot more of my values, these things that where I thrive and that fulfill me, into my next decision.
Right.
Because if I just choose the next thing, whatever that is, it depends on the person. And I haven't done that exercise. It's highly likely you're going to bring some of the, I would say the triggers that actually take from your energy. You're going to bring them into the next job, and it's just another loop. But time is
Absolutely.
precious, and your life is precious.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
you don't want to spend, if you spend, 5 years in a job, you don't want to spend another, couple of years repeating the same loop.
Right.
And so this
Right.
is an example of how we would tackle that.
That's beautiful. As you're talking, I'm just thinking about not just that one friend, but really about the last 4 years where we sort of started hearing more about horrible bosses, toxic environment, pressure, mental, well-being, depression. And as you're speaking, all these things are now coming up. I'd love to ask you, and I don't expect you to have the answer, but I really want to know what on earth happened. Where is this coming from? Is it, I know you say top down, but is it the industry? Is it the pressure of driving numbers? Is it the leadership? What is it? Because there isn't a single person in the last 5, 6, 7 months I haven't spoken to. And the moment you say, how are you? They will tell you, I can't stand my job, or I'm exhausted, or I'm tired, or I have anxiety. What happened?
Yeah. I could go on. If we can shoot for 5 hours, I will shoot with you for 5 hours about
We'll do
this.
another one on that.
Yeah. Look, it's a very complex ecosystem, right? Because, and I don't want to get too technical. Ultimately, and we touched on it last time, when you're working, you're responsible for meeting specific KPIs. And we know that, right? That's natural. Again, we're not, this isn't, when you're working for a large organization, it's not a charity, right? It's like you're there, you chose to be there, and you are responsible for driving specific results. Now, it gets really unhealthy if the only thing you drive is KPIs and results and revenue. Then it's entirely functional, transactional. I think the world of work hasn't adjusted, and I'm really hopeful that the next generation is going to teach us all a really big lesson.
Right.
I'm talking about the next younger generation, because they are not going to accept this way of working.
Right.
I know that for sure.
Right.
And so I told you last time, this is going to be a pandemic. I had no idea it's going to be this big and it's going to come this fast. And so I think there's lessons to be learned. I think we're not moving fast enough, right?
Right.
So what happened to, so we understand, right, that you have to drive KPIs and ROI. What happened to the ROI of caring?
Wow.
Right?
Right.
Why doesn't that, and I'm sure this sounds a bit far-fetched, but it's very much needed. Because the truth is, if you're going to be highly functional, then you have two options.
Right.
You say, for the people that work in your organization, this is a purely transactional relationship. You're here to do 1, 2, 3. You can expect from us as a leadership team 1, 2, 3, and here are your deliverables. It's an option, right?
Right.
And then you have the choice to say, I don't, yes or no. I don't want to be in a highly functional environment where like
Right.
emotions don't matter, and so there's really no level of care and compassion and empathy. I can tell you for sure that our generation and the next generation are not going to accept that kind of environment.
Right.
They won't,
Right.
right? Because that environment was created, to be honest, after the Second World War, where working was a way of creating security for yourself and a way of survival, right? And so it wasn't very important back then, the values of empathy and compassion and so on. But the world has changed.
Right.
And it's going to change extremely quickly.
Right.
And so now, when you're choosing a job, you're choosing it with certain expectations. You want to be seen and cared for because you're giving it so much of your life. And I've seen it. The last team, obviously, that I led is a wonderful team. And the more I cared, the more results we were able to drive together.
It's
not either
so
or.
spot on.
It's not, right?
Right.
And it's a sales organization.
Right.
And so it's not, so you have to, there are very strict KPIs. I think when it gets to a point where your everything you're discussing in the very limited and short period of time that you have with your team is purely about numeric values, numbers, revenue. Did you do this? Did we meet our weekly KPIs? The care goes out the window. And how much do you really know about your people? That's so important. That's why I say leadership is really hard.
Right.
It's hard and it's not for everyone because you do need to create time and space and go out of your way to check in with people. You have to.
Right.
That's how you build the connection. And, again, I'm saying you have to. That's a very strong statement. You would ideally want to.
Right.
That's what makes you a good leader.
Right. Yeah, it's so powerful what you just said because as you're speaking, I'm thinking of so many different scenarios I've encountered myself, or I've seen them and observed them. You said you were working with lovely individuals in your previous job, and when you worked more together, more human, you drove better results, right? And in the last episode, you already had an impact on me when you talked to me about being human, asking, how are you doing? How are you really doing, right? And so I took that. And in the nature of my job, where I work with different partners externally outside the company, I really made it a point before I start, no matter how pressured we are, but because of that statement, to make it a point before we start any meeting to say, how are you guys? How's your child? How is your family? And even if someone doesn't really want to share with you how they feel, the fact that they feel acknowledged is beautiful, right? And I want to go back to that point and really ask you, where does the line stop? Because I don't want people who are watching us today to also say, well, my boss never checks in on me, I'm going to stop delivering, right? We don't want that. We also don't want people to quit their jobs after this episode.
No, of course.
But where is that line? Where does the line meet between I have a great leader who checks in on me and therefore, as a result of that, I can deliver better because I owe them that because they're so good with me versus, you know what? I never have a conversation with my leader and they might not be a bad leader, but because there's no human conversation, they're just not able to deliver as naturally on the job. Where does that line begin and end?
It's definitely a two-way street, right? Again, I do put more of the responsibility on the leadership team in the workplace is because your behavior, you can have two types of organizations. I'm going to use some strong words because of everything that's going around us. You can have a healing organization and you can have a crushing organization.
Oh, absolutely.
These are my words,
absolutely.
Right? So I'm not and a healing organization is when your leadership team decides to, to care. And you do that through small daily actions. This isn't this big project. And, again, and I mentioned this earlier, you can have so many initiatives where you say, like, this is a well-being initiative. Let's go all work out at the gym together or let's do this activity. Trust me. What people want is just a small action. And this is what goes a really long way,
I couldn't agree more. That's so powerful.
It takes, and I'm going to speak from my own experience, and I love the moments, I would have obviously regular one-to-ones with my team and we have to talk about business and KPIs and so on, but I would always check in individually with everyone. I know about their partners. I know about, what they're going through. I know about sort of big moments that are coming up in their life, whether it's engagement or so obviously having a baby in the future or sort of preparing for a wedding. I care to know because when they're coming to the office, they're showing up as a whole individual.
Right.
And when you have, let me say, 20, 25 people in your team or even bigger, you can't obviously spend equal time with everyone. But when you're having the check-in, it's as simple as just checking how are you, how are you really doing? Again, you and I spoke about this last time, but how are you navigating
Right.
the current situation?
Mm-hmm.
Because like what is currently going on is, I don't think in the 20 years that I've worked, I've ever faced such a challenge
Right.
in the workplace.
Right.
And so, it's the little things. And it's a bit crazy to think about that we got to a point where we don't know how to do that anymore.
Right.
Right. And so how much will it really take you, if you're a team leader or you're people leader, you can run your business meeting. You can, and you can go through your KPIs and you can, discuss deliverables and so on. But you can also check in for a brief moment or offer somebody a coffee. Meet
I
them
was
for
gonna ask.
dinner. Meet
Yeah.
them for dinner. You know how much I loved spending time with my team. I absolutely love that because this is really, when you have those moments when you spend time together, whatever challenges you face the following week or the following weeks, you're stronger together. Trust me. It becomes easier to drive, to navigate challenges
Right.
together.
Right.
Because you don't even create the space to get to a point of detachment. You don't create a space to get to a point of, well, she doesn't really know what I'm going through. And so I'm just going to give it right now 60% or 70%. You're always connected.
Right.
And so we don't know how to do that anymore. And so the message here is that it's really easy to do. It's no investment. It's no
Right.
investment to check in with someone.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a question that might be a very provoking one for the ones who are watching us, but I would love to ask you because we need to speak things as they are and call out the real situations as they are. I know of so many bosses, I'm not going to call them leaders. Recently, people I used to work with 8-9 years ago that are now, we grew up together in the industry and we faced the exact same things, I think. But now they're in leadership positions. And I recently heard about one of them instilling complete and total fear on his team. And I want to give that as an example. I think it's important to call that out because my jaw dropped and I couldn't wait for this episode to bring it up to ask you, how do you deal with when someone comes to you with that specific example? So he has a team under him now and he comes to the office. Again, that's the same person. We grew up together in the industry. We worked together. We knew what it was like, having good leaders, bad bosses, etc. And now he comes to the office instilling absolute fear onto his team. And you're only allowed to speak to him when you take a token.
Oh.
Right? And he sits amongst his team members. So I have no idea where this is coming from. But what message would you send to the people of that person who are watching us today? And I know they are, by the way. What message would you send out to them?
I obviously don't know the environment or even the reference of whom, and none of that matters because we're talking about generally, a way of showing up. And so I believe in feedback, right? And I know that can be really scary.
Yeah.
And similarly to, we forgot how to check in with each other. We also don't have the muscle of giving each other feedback.
Right.
But feedback is, it's powerful and it's really needed. And so, different individuals deal with feedback differently. And I've seen this. And again, you have to know your people and know who is this individual within that team and that organization who could be in a good position to give this individual feedback. Right. Because I want to be careful because truly, some people are not comfortable. They shy away. And, it takes them time and they need guidance. They need to be coached through how to give feedback. And so I'm speaking maybe about the individuals who are more comfortable. Like if this is widespread and there is a theme of leading this team with fear, the most important thing is that I think this team need to have a conversation, with each other, but also really then decide this is about, what is it? How can we clearly articulate the impact that this person has on us?
Right.
And then also on the overall environment and on our ability to give it our best.
Right.
We're not children, right? And so the education system has even adjusted, and I think it has a long way to go. But if you think about how our parents used to go to school, they used to be hit with a stick on their hands,
Right.
at least in this region,
Right.
right? Probably even in other countries. And so the education system nowadays, my kids don't go to this. This is, that's not how the school system works. Actually, the system has become more compassionate, develops your character. So it's adjusted. Still has its ways to go, I believe, but it's adjusted. And so the world of work, there's no space to lead people with fear.
Right.
There's no space for that. That's old.
Right.
That's very old behavior. Your leadership style is already obsolete and is going to become more obsolete. And so I truly believe when a leader shows up this way, it comes from a much deeper, there's a negative motivator. So it's either a level of insecurity, a deep level of insecurity.
For sure.
Your own maybe trauma in terms of how you were led in the past.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But there is no way that when you show up and you lead people with fear that you are a fully healthy individual.
Right. Right.
Somewhere in your mind, in your mindset, something is off, and not to blame.
Right.
Again, we don't know who, I don't know, obviously, the full context here, but if you're showing up and you're instilling fear, there's something wrong with you, and you are projecting something that you're not happy with, that you're frustrated with, that, maybe this is learned behavior that you learned, and for some reason you felt like it served the environment in the past. It doesn't serve anyone anymore today because we have choice. People have choice. Right?
Yeah.
And a job it can be beautiful if you are thriving in your job and if you're really committed and you see growth for you. That's beautiful. That's amazing.
Right.
But that never happens in an environment where, you are led by fear.
Right. Led
Feedback.
by fear.
Yeah.
Feedback. So
Reflection.
I really want to stop on feedback. Yeah. And I think that's really important because it's going to push a lot of people who are watching us today that might be facing a situation to really understand what, okay, so how do I give feedback? And I want to reference back to another situation I know of where the leader, the boss, is very detached. He's very demotivated himself, probably hasn't developed in ages, but has a team under him. And it's gotten to a point where the team are detached themselves because they're seeing that their boss is totally detached. When and if they would be watching us today, when you ask someone to give feedback and you said it's a really scary thing, how do you approach feedback?
Yeah, I get this question a lot, by the way, and I train individuals a lot on how to give feedback. In its simplest form, regardless of what the situation is, my number one rule is that whatever you observed and whatever happened, you give the feedback in 24 hours. So don't wait longer than that.
Interesting.
You can, but within 24 hours, it's fresh. The facts are right there in front of you. And so that's in terms of, 24 hours ideally is a time frame when the feedback should be delivered. Ideally, even immediately after a meeting. But, when someone is highly emotionally charged, in this case, the leader, you can't really reason with them, right? You can't reason with any person who's highly emotional charged.
No.
Right? I can't reason with my children when they're highly emotionally charged. So I need to wait for them to calm down. So this is a human sort of a behavior, right? That's very natural. And so within 24 hours is important because it's still fresh, it's top of mind. The way that I approach it and the way that I teach it really is that you articulate, without a lot of emotion, right? Really, you stick to sort of the sequence of what happened. First of all, give it within the first 24 hours. Schedule a dedicated meeting for feedback. And so what I mean by that is let's say you've observed a leader that has just sort of acted out of line, or, was frustrated, whatever happened, is sort of not showing up in the way that he should or she should. You, rather than squeezing it into your next engagement and one-to-one, you talk about business and you say, oh, by the way, I also have feedback for you. That's not the way to do it.
Right.
And I highly recommend to actually be very clear about, whether you're scheduling it as a coffee chat or whether you're doing it virtually. It depends on the environment, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you really let the individual know that feedback is coming.
Mm-hmm.
Because you need to put them in the mindset of being open to receiving the feedback.
Oh, yeah.
So 24 hours, have a separate time slot dedicated for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then really articulate the impact. Just let them, remind them of, okay, so I had my observation was that you showed up in this way.
Mm-hmm.
This is the impact that it's had on me and the wider team.
Mm-hmm.
People have spoken to me. Some individuals might be scared to speak to you, and I've taken it onto myself. And I just want you to know that this is the impact. And so, how can I support you?
Right.
Right. It's not about blaming anyone.
Right.
But it is about being very articulate.
Right.
And stating the impact. So it's like, here's my observation. Here's the impact.
Mm-hmm.
Remember last time we talked about intention versus impact?
Right.
And even if your leader comes back and says, that was not my intention, but that's fine. But let's focus on the impact, because the impact is always what matters.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes things happen and it wasn't the person's intention, but what matters is the impact. And so here's my observation. Here's the impact that it's had on me and the wider team. And, how can I support you?
Mm-hmm.
What was the trigger? How can we work together? And so if you are in a, healthy state of mind as a leader, as a manager, you should be open to receiving it this way.
Yeah. If you're in a good state, as a healthy, good leader.
Yes.
Right.
If for whatever reason you're not,
yeah,
then that individual has to work on receiving feedback.
Absolutely.
It's another thing that we work on.
Of course. Right.
How do you receive feedback? Because we're very codependent in this world. Like, we don't live solo, we don't work solo, we don't go through our day solo. Our interactions have an impact on others. So it is an absolutely critical competency or sort of skill to be okay with receiving feedback.
Right.
That's what I would, that's how I would go about it.
And on that point, on feedback, so, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are coaching individuals, and as we mentioned, different hierarchies all over the world, different industries as well, from what I understood, very different industries. I think you coached a doctor not too long ago as well. So you're coaching individuals, you're holding leadership trainings for institutions and organizations. You are giving talks in a lot of cases, leadership talks, inspirational talks, correct me if I'm wrong. So what is the one thing you always want people to walk away with after you've spoken to them, coached them, preached them, you name it?
I love this question. What's the one thing I want, no matter what the topic is, what the challenge is, what the problem is, I want people to know that you always have choice, and change is always possible. So and that applies to anything that you bring to me. Anything. You throw at me a million scenarios right now, us sitting down, and I will always show you and bring you back to, you have choice. Right? It's like, I call it the 1-3-1, actually. Bring me the problem. Let's talk about 3 potential options that we have. And I want you to feel empowered and coming up with a solution.
Right.
It's like 1-3-1, right? And it can be more than 3. In some cases, in a lot of cases, people really find it very hard to recognize that they have choice and that change is possible. I think at the core of it, that's what it's about. Right? You always have choice. That's so empowering for you to know that. There was also a time, I think, that I went through. I was like, oh, I don't have a lot of choice. This is sort of what I chose. This is what's right for me. And so, I did a lot of the work to realize that. But it's this, I love that type of work. And if you ask me, like, what are some of the things that you absolutely love working through the most? It's mindset transformation, and it's crushing self-limiting beliefs. It is amazing when someone really, when it clicks. and someone looks at themselves with a heightened level of awareness and they say, wow, I act this way and these are some of the patterns I show up with. I don't want to keep
Right.
showing up this way or behaving this way. And then it clicks. And then it becomes like this beautiful challenge of, okay, let's work with me on making sure I can get over that. And that's sort of mindset transformation and, working through self-limiting beliefs. It's change at the end of the day. Choice and change.
Choice and change. And so when you are giving a training for a larger group and a bigger group within an organization, what are the different modalities you usually get called in for, if I can say that? So someone reaches out to you, an organization reaches out to you. What are the different modalities that usually you work with larger organizations on?
There's so many. I think some of the ones that are definitely in higher demand is, stakeholder management.
Right.
How do we work as a coherent, integrated team? How do we sort of work in an environment where we all feel like we belong and we feel like we're included and, our voice matters? How do we empower individuals within an organization, right? So those are definitely the most, I would say probably the ones in more demand.
Right.
Some of it is leadership talks. There's this very nice exercise that I do, which is called the user manual. So if you think about when you buy an appliance and you bring it to your house and it comes with a manual. It's a way of how you operate it, right? If I ask you now, Layal, how do you like to be dealt with at work? That's your user manual.
Right. Yeah.
We don't have those types of conversations a lot, but this is a very nice exercise that you can do with a group where you just get to know each other because we're all very different.
Right.
What triggers you?
Yeah.
How do you like to be dealt with when the stakes are high and, when there's a lot of stress at work? What motivates you? Because maybe what motivates you is different than what motivates me or your other colleagues in the team.
Right.
So these are some of the examples.
If you get called in by an organization, not just in MENA, but globally, and someone says to you, I need you to come in and change our culture. Can you change a culture?
That's absolutely the core of it.
Right.
You've actually said, well done. You've articulated something that I should have even mentioned earlier. Culture change work is at the core of all of this.
Right.
Right. And so can you change a culture? I truly believe you can if those individuals that are engaging or that are sort of part of that program are all willing to change.
Right.
And so very important, and I always said this, I said, I really want to work with organizations. And so my partner and I, Dr. Mark Rittenberg, we talked about this, and a few weeks ago we said, let's really work with organizations that are enlightened and that, they might have sort of not the ideal culture right now, but they really want to change it. They just need some help and some guidance on how to do that culture change work. It really is possible. I believe in it deeply. If there is an organization that has it sort of as a KPI or as a checklist, and so they bring you in and you do that work, but for whatever reason it's not being implemented, again, it starts from the top, right? That can happen.
Right.
And so it all goes back to the motivation of recognizing, we're not where we need to be.
Correct.
We can have a better culture. And we need someone externally to actually just make us aware of what we're not doing.
Beautiful.
And we all want that. We want that. We want that kind of culture of togetherness.
Right. 20 years in a very high-paid tech journey, if I can say that. It was a journey for you for 20 years. Benefits, money was good, growth, traveling around the world. Boom. You left it all behind because you heard your calling. Do you give advice, or what kind of advice would you give people today who tell you, I actually have a calling. I don't feel like I belong in this organization anymore.
Yeah.
What advice would you give them? I think you embody that change, right? So
you hit the arrow in my heart with this question right now, truly, because it's all still very fresh, right? And so I I need to navigate this very carefully. So I can speak for myself and I can tell you sort of how to go about it with other people, because we're all in different stages in our life, right?
Right.
And so I said it earlier, I feel very blessed and grateful that I was able to get to a stage in my career after 20 years where I am able to truly follow my calling, my passion, and my mission of developing other leaders, right? But that wouldn't have happened if a few years ago I didn't invest my time. Once I identified that this is my calling, I needed to create some form of action, because it's
Right.
one thing for you to know what you're passionate about, right? And then it's another thing to act on that.
Right.
And thankfully, I acted on it, not even knowing where it's going to take me. I had
Right.
no idea, that, me dedicating more of my time to leadership coaching, leadership development, and sort of traveling to the States and, meeting this wonderful community of executive coaches who've been doing this for decades, right? They
Right.
opened my eye to so many things. And I think when I met Mark, my partner, who's the founder of the Berkeley Executive Coaching Institute, I have to say he changed my life, right? He changed my perspective on, I was in a really good place.
Right.
I didn't have to, I wasn't planning on leaving my corporate job. But it was this, that twilight moment where you're like, if you don't take this, you're going to regret this deeply.
Wow.
This opportunity. And then as I worked with Mark through the transition, because he, he was my go-to person to talk through this. There was so
Right.
much happening at work. I didn't want to bring that constantly into the workplace. And so my manager was wonderful. He was really supportive, when I started sort of telling him about my plans of transitioning. But it was really Mark that worked with me and changed my mindset around, that this is possible. And so
Right.
that you're not dreaming. The world needs it.
Right.
The world needs,
Good leaders.
good
The world
leaders.
needs good leaders. I think we have to
Inspirational
put it out
leaders.
there. Right.
Exactly. And so, yeah, it wasn't easy for me to give it up, but I felt in my core that I got to a point where it's so right. And again, so thankful that I had the luxury to do that, because I want to be realistic. I will honestly never, anyone who comes to me and says, I'm identifying what my calling is or what my true passion is, I can't in good conscience sit there and tell them 100% go after it.
Right.
I believe go after it. But there is also a time frame and a maturity to the time of, so what do you need to do to fulfill, to make that a reality for you?
Right.
And that might be different from what I needed to do. I needed to put certain things in action a couple of years ago to be able to do this. And even if you asked me maybe 3 years ago, I wouldn't have known that this would be my reality right now, that I have the, luxury to be able to dedicate my time to developing others. I absolutely love this.
Yeah.
And I would love anyone who has a calling and a passion, and for whatever reason, it can be at work,
Right.
right? There are individuals who really truly are working in their dream company. That exists.
Yeah. Yeah. And they
Right?
keep that hat on and
Yeah.
they're fine with it.
Exactly.
Right.
But, for those individuals who feel like, whether you are in that environment and you feel like I could do things differently to thrive even more, to actually thrive. There's a
Right.
difference between just getting by and thriving. And we can work through that. Or I have a passion in certain things that this job is giving me. And in extreme cases, which is what I did, is like you leave the job and you leave the industry and you dedicate your time to something entirely different. This takes work.
Right.
Again, being honest with yourself and really taking the time to reflect. Whenever I do purpose coaching, so coaching on identifying purpose and passion, it's never less, sort of the first time we sit together, it's never less than 3 hours. You would not believe
Wow.
that, right? And so it's never less than 3 hours. It's deep work, and it takes a lot of, again, self-reflection, awareness, and letting things simmer and process. And then we move into action.
Right.
What do you need to do today to make that a reality for you? And I wouldn't even say in 5 years, because we never know. Sometimes it can turn around in a year. Sometimes it takes longer. It depends, right? It really depends on what that individual, what field are they in? What is that passion project or path that they have? What's the level of investment that they need? It's, again, there's no one formula, but I am a huge believer in that when you're aware of what your passion is, definitely that is amazing. You've woken up and you've seen something that you can't unsee anymore.
Right.
Can't unsee that. And you've seen
Right.
it, you're aware of it. But then it takes work. And so that's the type of work that we would then do in individual coaching sessions.
You know what? First of all, a huge shout out to Dr. Mark Rittenberg, your partner.
Yeah,
I think you've told me off air some inspirational stories about him and who he's worked with on a scale that probably we would read about only in history
That's
books.
true.
So I would love to ask you both, as the founders of UC Berkeley in MENA, are you guys creating a movement or a change?
I love that. It's a movement of change.
Nice.
It's a movement of change because I think change comes with any movement. I would like this to be a movement, right? And, to some people, this might sound like big words, but actually to me, it isn't because I'm in the space already. I am engaging with so many individuals that I can sense that this is a silent movement that didn't surface yet.
Wow.
Right? So it's already there.
It's brewing.
It's brewing. It's not being talked about. People actually don't know. Look, I've had a situation recently where, I'm working with a client of mine who said, I wasn't sure whether you can actually help me with this because you're not from the same industry. And, 3 sessions later, we're in an amazing place and we're going deeper and deeper in those. And this individual is now taking back those learnings into their job and coming back to me and telling me, I tried this, here's where I failed, here's where I did really well. Like, can you,
Right.
And does sort of simulation with me in those sessions. So I think it is already a silent movement, but it is our responsibility, right? As executive coaches, I'm not the only one in the region. And I think this is wonderful work, whoever is dedicating themselves to this space is, it's a mission.
Right.
It's a mission. And I think I see this, in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, I see this to be a lot more widespread. And this is what I want to do. Like, I'm super happy to travel the entire region. South Africa is really close to Mark's heart. He did a lot of work there. Looking forward to traveling with him to the market. So, wherever we can be of value.
Wow. And contribute.
To that change.
Right.
We will.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Disclaimer and personal opinion, since you just talked about that, but really, I would love to say it looking at the camera, but really, if you are a leader, if you're a boss, if you're up for a promotion, if you are in your current state, as you are, irrespective of your title, I am asking you, please, to reassess yourselves. I do this all the time. We're all not perfect. We all need help. We all need advice. You are the co-founder of the UC Berkeley
Executive
Institute.
Coaching.
Exactly. Executive Coaching Institute in MENA. You have your own coach, right? And I think that's wonderful, is how we all need change and we need to really be open to it, right? Because I don't think we will evolve if we stay where we are. So many people I know of that have been in the exact same position for years, and that's fine. That's completely fine. I mean, I'm not here to judge whether they've been there for 2 years or 15 years, but evolve, change as a human, right? You're adding more responsibility to your plate. You're guiding others, right? You want to make sure you are the right leader for them. And if you're really looking for that change, I think, I've read all about UC Berkeley. I've read about, you told me about the modalities, which are never ending, by the way. And I find it so intriguing, honestly speaking. And I think it's wonderful how you're bringing that into the region. I know you were in Saudi recently, and you're in touch and in contact with a lot of, government officials as well. And you're having conversations with different corporations and institutes on everyone wants change. Yeah. And I think that's so important. It's because I respect institutions so much that say, we want change, but we need someone to help us get there.
Absolutely.
Respect. Hats off. And I think that's what you and and UC Berkeley leadership and Dr. Mark Rittenberg are here for, and your partners and the people working with you. And really, like, just one question for you. As someone who's been coaching so many different personalities, and you don't have to answer that, but what is the most difficult personality to coach?
What is the most difficult personality to coach is the personality that is lacks awareness.
I love that, by the way.
Yes. But
I was hoping you would say that.
yeah. Lacks awareness. And so, awareness is something that you can, I can bring to you.
Mm-hmm.
It takes work, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I have made you aware of certain behaviors and patterns and you're still not seeing them,
Mm-hmm.
and you're still pointing fingers at like, this isn't me, this is being done to me,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's sort of, playing the victim. That is the most difficult, persona to coach. Again, it's not impossible. And I've said it last time. If you lack that self-awareness, you come to me and tell me, I've been told that I'm not very self-aware. And here are some of the patterns or like, cases that are happening to me in the workplace or even in my personal life. And so can you help me analyze this? Like, where am I showing up wrong? That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
That is beautiful to work through. Right. And so it's not, I want to be very considerate. Like, it's not about, if you're not self-aware, then that means you're bad. No.
Mm-hmm.
But if you've been told that there's a lack of awareness,
Mm-hmm.
and you've heard it now, and you can see the patterns of where you're showing up and the conflict that's creating or the tension or the friction, and you're now working towards change, great. If then still you're showing up the patterns after doing some of the work, right? Then I would really ask a deeper question. It's like, do you really want to change?
Mm-hmm.
Because if not, then clearly in some way, this is serving you the way that you're showing up. It's not serving others, but it's serving you.
Right.
Then it's much deeper.
Right.
It's much deeper.
Right.
Right. And so self-awareness, I would say, lack of self-awareness.
In the situation we're in, and what I started the intro with, the situation in Gaza, and obviously without going to too many details, but let's speak it out as it is. A lot of people are impacted emotionally, mentally with what they're seeing. They may have friends of friends or friends or relatives that are in that situation. What's the one word of advice you would love to give leaders today in the region who have people working for them that are really mentally impacted by what's happening? One word of advice, one statement of advice.
Ask them what they need.
Right.
Ask them what they need, because we are, everyone is impacted. And somehow, I've experienced my own trauma in 2006 in Lebanon, and, know what it's like when you have bombs raining above your head. Like, so no one asked me then if I was okay and what I needed. Right. And so again, this is now a long time ago, but just ask them, what do they need in this moment? They're part of your extended circle. Right? You're seeing them every day. Just ask them what they need. And maybe that is, some more flexible working hours on a Friday or whatever that is for this person. Or some people, and I have seen this, just allowing them to talk and tell you, this is how I feel. It goes a long way. Like, I've had also cases where, I created that space and the individual told me, like, thank you just for creating that space. And now we can pivot again.
Right.
Now I'm okay. Like, I'm not, and I can't say that person is okay, but they can pivot. They can pivot and they can talk about work again because they've been heard and validated. And so definitely ask them what they need, but also be vulnerable yourself. Because unless you're living under a rock, you're impacted or you've had some form of emotion over the last couple of months, right? Truly. And if you saw just one thing in the news or one horrific image, and if you felt something in the last 7-8 months, then just talk about it.
Right.
Just validate. It takes nothing to do that.
Validate. Right.
Right. Ask them what they need and be vulnerable yourself.
Right.
That's my advice.
I love that.
Yeah.
Validation. I absolutely love that. I think a lot of people are not feeling heard. You received messages yourself after your explosive LinkedIn post where people said, thank you. I've been scared to speak.
Yes.
I've been scared to say how I feel. There is nothing to be scared of. We're humans at the end of the day. Unless you badly want to work with robots, please hire robots, right?
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, you have human beings working for you,
Yes.
under you, in your organization. A lot of people who are available more than 12 hours a day. Check in on them,
Yes.
right? Your last word of advice to the leaders of every corporate institution in the region today, and your last word to the students that are watching you and they're going into the world of career and corporate and whatnot.
Oh, wow. On both sides of the scale. My last words of advice for leaders is, the world around you is changed. It's changed. It's changed. Wherever you are in the world has changed.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you can just acknowledge that and recognize that, then just ask yourself, what role do I play in being there for the people around me
Wonderful.
as they are all navigating this change,
Right.
right? That's for our leaders. And then for the students is, I'm counting on you. I'm counting on you, on the next
We all are.
generation
Yeah.
to drive change. And
Be
so
good leaders.
to be good leaders, but also to be empowered. I would like to see you come into the workspace feeling empowered, knowing your worth. No company gives you your worth. Your worth is, that's from within. And, no matter what challenges come your way, just feel empowered to speak up, right? And there's a way to do it. There's a way to be diplomatic about it. There's a way to speak your heart, but in the most human way, in the most natural way, feel empowered. We need that. We need empowerment today.
Right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you is an understatement.
Yeah.
I've been away and absent, and the show has been absent for 7 months. I wasn't sure how we should come back because we've been silently watching the news. We are all equally impacted. The fact that you accepted to come and talk about what's really happening today, and the fact that you've gone through the change the last 7 months, I don't think it could have been any better. As I always say, this is not going to be the last time. So this was the second time, but it's not going to be the last time. We're looking forward to having you and, hopefully soon one of your clients with us to talk about that journey.
Yes.
If obviously they're okay talking about it. But I think I really want to end it on a note that I know you said you don't want to end it on that note, but I really want to end it on that. I urge everyone, again, to look at themselves, assess themselves, and even if it's 5% of change or 95% of change, whether you're a chief, whether you're a director, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a VP, you're an engineer, you name it, you're a coder, you name it, unless you're a robot, but as long as you're a human, please get change. Ask for help. And, if you want to check in with the UC Berkeley Institute Leadership Program in MENA, now is the perfect time to do so. They're now here in the region. I want them to reach out to you, to be comfortable and to feel like this is a safe space.
Of course.
That they can reach out to you. I want to personally thank you. I love talking to you because you say it as it is.
Yeah.
And I think we're lacking that.
And you're inspirational. And honestly, I have been struggling myself so much. And what's happening on social media right now is, it's either you're consuming horrific news or the content isn't all that meaningful.
At all.
And what you're doing here, a lot of respect for you for
Thank
pausing this. I know this is your passion. This is your passion project, right? And you paused it. And so much respect for that. And for you using your platform for what matters.
Right.
So thank you.
Thank you so much. And this won't be the last time.
No.
We have a lot more to go.
Yes.
I've been enjoying so many different podcasts where their guests keep coming back because whether they're leadership kind of advocates or whether they're healers or whether they're inspirational individuals that are spreading meaning and purpose. This is why we're bringing people like you out here, because it's time that everyone who's struggling somehow feels like they want to talk. They know that there are options. There's a choice. You are that choice for people. Thank you so much.
I'll definitely be back.
Absolutely. I'd love to have
you.
If
the team promised me to turn the AC on in the studio.
Absolutely. And thank you so much.
All
really
right.
appreciate it. Thank you.